Okay, so welcome everyone. December the 14th, this is our EMEA Americas timed demo. And let's have a look. So Myra, I'm going to hand over to you. Thanks for filling in the agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. So just taking over the actions from the previous demo, we were talking about how to unlock the maintenance policy from the release environment. So the maintenance policy is not blocked on the release environments effort. And I summarized the discussion that you had on the demo. So basically, to move on with the maintenance policy without the release environments, we need a way to test these new versions. And for the current stable version, we will follow the same process as we follow now. The version will be deployed to the release environment, and then a pipeline for Q&A will be triggered, which is the same process as we have now, and nothing has to be changed. But for the patch releases for the previous versions, we are going to use the backport maintenance policy process that basically relies on triggering a pipeline and waiting for that pipeline to be green. And then quality basically watches that pipeline, waits for it to be green, and signs off in the release. Now, I was reading the process about backporting about the backport Q&A testing process, and it is a bit blurry from my perspective. I'm not sure if I am understanding the process correctly, but it seems that it is only waiting for that pipeline to be green. Quality doesn't do anything else other than waiting for that pipeline, and then just if that pipeline is green, they sign off, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's running QA on the image. It's building an image on top of the merge request and running QA. So if it's green, it's green, right? So it passed the QA. If it's not, then they have to figure out why. It's not different than they deploy on the instance and run QA. It's kind of the same thing. It's just that the instance is ephemeral.
I see. Okay. And would that be enough to say that if we have that job, the package and QA job, green on the stable branches, would that be enough for quality to say, hey, like the pipeline is green, this is probably a version that is ready to be published?
So I wrote a note about this in the issue today. So if I understood correctly, let's call it underlying problem. The underlying problem is that the E2E package and deploy, whatever the name of the thing, job, is not available on the stable branches.
It is.
It
is now.
I was looking this morning on 15.6 stable EE, and I couldn't find it.
Oh, it is not like on the stable branch, but it appears on the merge request. When you merge something in the stable branch, the job is there. It's just now it's allowed to fail.
So do you mean that is only available on the merge result pipeline?
Exactly.
Yeah, and my point on that was that I think that it should be on the stable branch. So that we know it, because it will give us a red stable branch if the QA isn't working.
Yes. Okay. Should it be in both sides? Should it be before the merge request is merged and on the stable branch?
So the thing is that if two, it's unlikely, but two maintainers are merging two different backport on the same stable branch, the way the merge request result pipeline works is such that each one will be tested independently, because this is not the merge train, is merge result. So both take the target branch on the current state, apply the merge on it, and run a pipeline on the merge result. And then if you hit merge, basically it will merge again. So which means that if they were pushed at the same time, they will be running not one on top of the other, but just each one on top of the stable branch. Okay?
Yeah, I get it. My concern
they may
about
fail
having it on the stable branch is
Sorry?
that, yeah, just that my concern about having it on the stable branch, but not on the merge request, is that if it fails, it's going to fail on the stable branch, which is after the merge, which might be too late for developers to act on it. So I would prefer for the failure to show up on the merge request before merging into a stable branch.
Yeah, it should be in both sides. I do agree with you.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
it makes no sense to have it merged if it's going to fail, because you can know ahead of time, but as well, we also want to make sure that the stable branch itself, so the things that we are going to tag and package, went through QA.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And
Now
so
to
you
my
had the,
original
question as well, Myra, about few points where you were asking, like, would it be enough for quality to sign off if we did this, or how does that work? I think it would be good either on the issue you already have or on a separate issue, but to actually us to get to like, this is the process we want to use to be able to test these versions, and then we can talk to quality and basically be like, here's our proposal, you know, how, like, so they know it's coming, and also if they have any like alternate ideas they want to include.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Who will be the best person to tag in quality about this?
So for now, we don't have anyone named. I would suggest Vinci and ask her to direct it to someone appropriate.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm going to expand probably that issue with this proposal about triggering that job and being seen from quality to follow up. Okay. Should we move on to the next item? Awesome, which is also my item. Okay. Going to share my screen. I'm going to share it all. I'm assuming you are already seeing my screen, and if not, please say something. I have been working about pushing the patch release information to the delivery metrics. And this is basically for the information to appear on the release manager dashboard, and release managers have like a way to tell, like, okay, there is enough pressure so we can start a patch release. When I was implementing this, I noticed that there is actually no merge request merged into the stable branches that hasn't been published. And that is explainable because we don't have like a patch release in progress, not a security release. So everything that is on the stable branches has been published, and there was no straightforward way for me to test this. So what I did was to prepare a merge request and merge it into a stable branch. Please note that this stable branch is out of the policy, like it is not going to affect any patch release or security release. And it is just like a documentation change. Very simple, like not intrusive at all or not disruptive at all. And it was actually a merge request that got like the peak into 15.3. So there it is. So I merged this, and now I can show you the code that I am preparing, which is this one, which is already in review. And I think Alessio already did some comments, so that's awesome. So I'm gonna jump into my terminal, and I think this pressure. So first of all, I had to modify release tools. So it actually considered 15.3 to be inside the policy. Right now it is outside, but I have to modify it. And the code is also only analyzing projects. It is only analyzing the GitLab project. It is not analyzing Omnibus nor Gitali nor Pages to make this test as succinct as possible. Okay, so this is a lot of debugging information that we can ignore. The result that we are interested in is basically this one. It is fetching the merge requests based on severity for each version. We can see that we don't really have anything for 15.5. The same results is for 15.4, but we do have something for 15.3, which is an S4. And well, we can see that this merge request, that it was this one, it is actually like an S4, so it is considering the correct merge request. Now, if I change it to severity 3 or something, I just need to restart this because it is memoized. So it should reflect the new change. And there we go. So we have one S3 for 15.3 that hasn't been released nor published, and this can count as a patch pressure. Now, this information is basically a Ruby object, and the next step is to push that Ruby object into the release pressure, into the delivery metrics, which is what this class is doing. It is just basically sending all that information into the metrics, and then it should appear like, well, it should be available for us to use it in the dashboard, which is the next step for this merge request and something that I am working on. So yay, that's my demo.
Nice. Thanks for demoing. What are the next steps that you have? So I guess like how many steps away from having this data usable in delivery metrics are we?
Yeah, it is a matter of merging that merge request, enable that feature flag, and start testing. Right now, since we don't have any data on 15.5, nor 15.6, nor 15.4, it will show as 0. But as soon as we start merging something, whether it is in a patch release or a security release, the numbers will start to increase, and they will show up like in a metric.
What is that sort of thing like? What are we sort of thinking we'll be able to have this patch release pressure like running alongside our existing metric?
Yep.
Like, sorry, like when do we think we'll be able to start seeing that?
Well, as soon as this is merged, and then we can start implementing, or we can start expanding the release manager dashboard to show the new widget.
Have you got an idea of how long that will be?
I'm not sure. It really depends on how on the reviews and on the implementation details.
Okay, right. It'd be great to get that up because I think as soon as we can start seeing those running in parallel, then we can like really start sort of building from there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so in the next item, I'm going to move to items to discuss. Regarding the maintenance policy extension, we have agreed that it will be unblocked from the release environments, meaning that we are not going to use the release environments on the first iterations. They are no longer like a requirement. They will be sort of a nice to have. But that point us in an interesting discussion about how developers will know when their merge request is going to likely to reach customers or they are going to be patched. With the release environments, we could have used like the merge request widget because it would have shown like, okay, this merge request was pushed into the 15.5 environment or the 15.3 environment. But without the release environment, that is only going to work for the current stable version. The problem is going to be for the last two previous versions because they are not going to be deployed to any environment. They are going to be tested to the maintenance policy. Now, I have some ideas about how can developers know when the patch release is going to be available. And it is basically about reusing the same tooling that we have now. The patch release can be broadcasted with Slack. And we can also expand the ChatOps release check to support patch releases.
But doesn't it already support it?
Patch releases?
I mean, if you if I remember, you give him a merge request, right? And he check if it's inside any tag. So maybe wrong here, but it already support the current patch releases. So because what we have here is not we have a backport AMER, so it's a different AMER with a different SHA. So we need to verify, but I'm expecting the ChatOps check release merge request, if you give the backport merge request, to tell you if it's part of the patch release for that old version.
I think the default behavior is that if you passed a merge request without any version, it is going to check if it was deployed to production. And then if you passed a version, then it is going to check if it was included on that version.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember. So yeah, maybe it's this way.
So yeah, I mean, we can expand that or we can reuse that.
As a super short term, so this, I think this is still there may be environments. I think it's a very much an unknown. But I think if we need it, another short term option could be to just make an announcement, right? We could just do the notify to say, patch release for 15.4 is going, is being prepped. It goes next week, whatever. Like if we really had to.
Okay.
But in any case, isn't the changelog already enough, or the automated blog post, right? Because it goes into each one merge request. So if the question is, when my merge request was shipped, yeah, that's hard. But if it's more the patch release was how did it actually included mine, you can go on the blog post and should be a link to your. In the short term, obviously, right? So we want to have a better support material. Okay,
awesome. I just wanted to make sure that we have the tools so developers can like self-serve and be aware of if the merge request was included in a patch release, and it seems that we have.
I think if it ends up being a long gap, we can look at tooling. I think hopefully it'll be a short enough thing that it'll be. I hope we don't need to build tools and also then remove tools. So let's try and avoid if we can.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Before we move on to the next topic, just generally around the maintenance policy, roughly, do you have a rough idea, Myra, of like percentage-wise of how far you are through that epic in terms of like 0 to 100 of like, we would be able to make the maintenance policy extension at 100? Do you have a rough idea?
Very roughly, I would say that we are around between 30 to 40%.
Okay. Cool. Alessio, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I was looking at the current state of pages managed versioning and trying also to bring into the conversation the other pages maintainers to make sure that we can have this ready in time for the next monthly. And this reminded me of the very old issue 831 about being able to do shadow releases, because the current proposed test plan, I think, so let me rephrase. I think it is likely going to be more dangerous to tag a fake version and then have to undo all the things that the tool is doing, because right now is a lot more than what it used to be when initially Yorick was doing his test, because he used to tag 40 in the 40 release. Compare it to actually, because we have the feature flag, try it. So not really just, well, okay, it's monthly release, gonna do it and cross our fingers, but more about having some sort of, let's test some of those pieces independently. We know that the gluing code around this already works because it's the same one we're using for Gisali. And so I was thinking roughly the last three release that we have are those one in the list, right? So 15.6.2, 15.5.6, 15.5.4.6. So one step could be we run a managed release of only pages for those three. I created the stable branches already from the whatever was released on those versions. So outcome of this is changelog with no changes. It just gives the new version, no changes, new tag, and that's it. So we know that tagging and creating the changelog of pages works. Then on top of when this works, we can say, maybe we can do a GitLab patch release. So a current patch release for the whole package. And if we are able to do this before tagging the monthly release, it kind of give us another big chunk of this run, because there will be no stable branch generation, because in a patch release is already there, but it covers most of the code base of what we introduced. And then it's around the 22nd, and we're going to run the regular release with everything included. And yeah, I mean, pages is quite at the beginning of it. So if it fails, we can remove the feature flag and continue with a manual process basically around it. So my gut feeling is that this covers more or less the same thing, and is more likely creates less troubles and less extra work to undo all the things that a fake run will generate.
Is there any concern with having those those tags existing on pages? Like if we have 15.6.2, does that create any confusion for users or anything like that?
So it will create confusion in any case, because there will be the big version gap. So if we are going to create those ahead of time, then we can do an extra merge request that just update the changelog when we add there something like those. This is where version 1.62.0, which I think is one of those, got aligned into managed versioning, and so this is technically the same software. From now on, this will be the version scheme that you will see. Those will be tagged. Those will be there, but they will not be released, because we are not going to repackage GitLab for those, right? We are just creating the same version with the expected numbers. That's my proposal for this.
And that sounds sensible. Does it matter what version you end up putting a patch release out for?
No, but
because we probably have stuff, but I'm thinking like if we need it for testing purposes, like there are. Like
you mean we're going to tag something earlier? So
if we needed to, like, so Stephen, Myra, you weren't in this morning's Delivery Weekly, but we talked, Alessio suggested to the release managers that we try and do a patch on Friday. So I think in this case, like if we don't have, I think we have things, but if we didn't have anything that was ready to patch on Friday for 15.6, we could always patch something older.
Yeah, we have 5 merge requests at the moment. I don't know how important they are. That's why I was suggesting we can do for that one instead of going back. But if we go as back as 15.4, it will do the right thing.
It is always difficult to test these integrations. I think I was talking with Steve about this yesterday, because we don't really have a playground to test them once they are implemented. So we always come up with something like, oh, we need to do it live, but be careful about it. And I think it is one of these problems that it is very particular for delivery, because the same thing happened with the rearrange of the coordinated pipeline. There is no way to really test it other than actually do the deployment. So it is an interesting problem that we have here.
Also, there was a point that I made in the agenda that I forgot to mention. I'm not entirely sure that the release classes are really idempotent. I'm thinking about especially changelog generation and version bumpings, because so I don't know the changelog generation what we'll do if there are no commits past the tag, because in theory, if you rerun, it will just try to generate the changelog between the head itself. So maybe it's smart enough to do nothing, or maybe he has an extra line saying same version again and nothing changes. I don't know.
It does nothing.
It does nothing? Okay.
It does
cool.
nothing, yeah.
Yeah,
I verified that when I implemented another class, but yeah, it does nothing.
That's great. But the version bumping, we are generating updates for version file. Either the GitLab itself does for the components, but also the version file. So each component has its own version in its own repo, and we update that one, right? So again, this is we are asking through the API to create a commit that in theory has the same content of what is already there. I don't know what happens, but I'm sure, 90% sure, that there is a trick in tagging EE and CE, because we do some weird magic with the version file. So maybe that thing could just rerun because it is not finding the expected file. But in any case, yeah. So this is something probably we should try to take a look a bit closer and see what is happening there. Because I was expecting something like at the beginning of the execute, if this tag is already here, skip everything. While it seems more to be that each line is something like, if the branch exists, do nothing, otherwise create. If this tag exists, do nothing, otherwise create. But then there are those intermediate steps, or just the order of step themselves could be tricky. Yeah, so that's.
Who would like to have a fun issue to write up to try and capture a investigation for that?
For the item potency, you mean?
Sorry, what did you say, Steve?
For checking if it's item potent.
Yeah, just seeing like, yeah, so
Okay.
it's set up so we can do an investigation into that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can write an issue for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. And there might be some gaps. I think it's a good one for Alessio not to write, because I think this is, we're very much Alessio territory right now. So great knowledge there. Not, you don't have to do the investigation, Steve, but just to get the issues so that we can prioritize this. One other thing about RCs that's massively changed as well since the last time when we did a lot of work here and Yurik was testing these, was also whether or is there a risk that we end up affecting Jihu, as they are picking things up from our stable branches as well, or looking at our packages. So that's the other one that makes it a bit more complicated than it used to be. Cool. What do we want to do then about next steps? Like, did we get enough from the release managers? Are the release managers going to kick off like a potential patch on Friday, or how do we want to coordinate this stuff?
I think we first want to make sure that we tested some of those steps ahead of time. So I don't know if we want to do the retag first. So I think there is something that we can do between the three of us as those who know what is happening with this epic, and then talk about the patch release. I need to open the door. Be back soon, sorry.
And Steve, are you like available over the next few days to sort of work, like maybe like lead on some of this testing with guidance from Alessio?
Yeah.
Perfect. Great stuff. Because yeah, we talked a little bit this morning in Delivery Weekly, and it sort of was a Friday or maybe Monday are good days to do patches. So, but once we go beyond some point on Monday, right, we'll be in the release prep. And what I mentioned to Michele earlier is I wonder if Monday might be a tricky day on deployments, because on Friday, it's the last working day of the milestone. For a lot of people, it might also be the last working day of the year. So I think there's a possibility we might see more things merged on later on Friday than we often do, which might increase risk for Monday. So if we do want to do a patch sort of late in the prep stage, then we should handle the patch release so that the release managers can focus on the monthly. But that might be good anyway, right? If we're testing stuff, we might actually want to be doing the patch release so that you can test.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we want to do this for a specific reason. We want to check specific outcome. So being in a patch release is kind of easy compared to everything else. I think we can run them. I mean, at least I can help in the EMEA time zone to start prepping everything.
Cool. Sounds good. Great. Is there other stuff we should discuss for today? Just one quick update then. So in terms of sort of how things are looking, so Graham is wrapping up his year on Friday. And then hopefully he'll be back and working on the release environments from early January. And then I think pretty much everybody else is mostly around next week. So what I will do is actually, open question actually, what do you want to do for the demo next week? So I will cancel the EMEA APAC one, unless Alessio, you want us to, we can hang out and play Mario. There'll only be us. Or we could, and so then we have an option, right? Would people like to have another EMEA Americas next week? Or we could skip, the week after will be cancelled because of the holidays.
So I'm thinking aloud here. I think it may mostly depend on how the test on pages goes. Because if that is done and we can call it done, it means like we have completed that batch of work, and then it's more about where we are with the backport policy extension. So if we are at the same stage as where we are this week, because let's say we try to focus on close that other one as an example, then maybe it's pointless. But if instead, let's say Steve and I can work on the GitLab pages stuff and Myra can move on the metrics tracking, so maybe there's an option to also see the values live and do some Thanos query altogether to see what those numbers look like. Was also thinking aloud here, because we are going to do a patch release. If there is a timing that we can use to gather the metrics before tagging. If there is an option for us to actually see Myra's work running in the tiny fraction of time. Yeah, I mean, it's not a tiny fraction because we tag manually, right? So we merge the preparation branch and then, so we can do it, right? So that could be a good opportunity to see it actually live with the real, will it work? Because we are doing the preparation branch. So what will end up there? We'll count just
it
one.
Would work if it is not like tag before Wednesday that it show. Yeah, but if it is tag before, then it is not going to show up.
Will it count one, or it will count one? Because the merge commit is the one from the preparation branch. and everything is picked into the preparation branch. It's not the same workflow that but we see what happens, right? So probably even if it counts just one, it should be probably one with priority known.
Yeah, exactly. But if I am understanding, the patch will be prepared on Friday and then released on Monday. And if we have the demo on Wednesday, then it will be.
No, I mean, yeah, I'm right. I'm just saying that if we record the values on 10 on Prometheus, then we can look at the values on the demo.
Oh, yeah.
Because we can change the time frame and see what happened during the release process.
Okay, how about I put some demo time in for next Wednesday, and we can cancel if needed, because it's a lot easier to schedule something a week in advance and cancel it than it will be to book it in like a day in advance. Cool. Great. Sounds good. Excellent. Well, that's an exciting end to the year. To hopefully test 2 things on a patch release, and we'll see how that looks. Super. Is there any other stuff we should mention on this call?
Nope.
No? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much for the discussions and demos. Thanks for filling in the agenda, Myra. Thanks for all the notes, Steve. And yeah, well, excited to see how the next few days go.